The National Desk, America's News Now.
Nothing has changed about our focus on those hostages. We want to get the rest of them out.
And more hostages were released. How this impacts the impending ground invasion.
We want our fair share. So let's get to it. Let's stand up and let's win this thing.
The UAW strikes again. Who of the big three were hit today with more worker walkouts? And then a murder in Detroit over the weekend might not be what it appeared to be. Why police are against a hate crime designation. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Breaking right now, 2 more hostages released from Hamas captivity. These images just coming into our newsroom. Take a look at your screen. 85-year-old Yocheved Lifshitz and 79-year-old Nurit Cooper, both women reportedly abducted from their homes in a kibbutz along with their husbands. Their husbands tonight remain in Gaza. The two have reportedly been handed over to Red Cross at the Rafah crossing right at the Egypt-Gazan border. From there, they will be transported to Israel. That brings the total number of hostages released to 4 as far as we know. 2 American Israeli hostages, Judith and Natalie Renan, were freed on Friday, and we understand the mother-daughter duo are expected to be back on their way to Chicago, where they live at any time now. Israel most recently upped the number of hostages it believes are being held to 222. The U.S. now advising Israel to delay a ground invasion into Gaza to allow for more time for hostage negotiations. Earlier today, President Biden dismissing calls for a ceasefire until everyone is freed.
We should have a ceasefire. It's not a ceasefire. We should have those hostages released, and then we can talk.
Meantime, tonight, the number of Palestinians killed in the Israel-Hamas conflict topping 5,000 as the IDF widens its offensive against Hamas. This video here really just showing the destruction and aftermath in central Gaza. Israel, in the last 24 hours, ramping up its aerial bombardment on the Palestinian territory, launching over 300 strikes in that time period. The strikes claiming the lives of 436 Palestinians, pushing the death toll to now above 5,087, with more than 14,000 wounded since this war began. The death toll in Israel, that remains at 1,400 as a result of that initial Hamas attack. And as casualties mount, intensifying calls for fuel in the territory. Food, water, and medical supplies began trickling into Gaza pretty slowly over the weekend, but fuel, that has been barred for entry by Israel out of concerns that it will reach Hamas. Doctors in Gaza, meantime, plea for help as hospitals struggle to keep generators running to power life-saving medical equipment like ventilators and incubators.
The small babies, we have more than 130 in our neonatal ICU units. What to do with them? They will, I think we are allowing them to die in peace. This is the issue if we don't have a fuel to run our generators in the hospital.
The humanitarian crisis dramatically inflaming tensions in the Arab world out of fear of a widening conflict. The U.S. boosting its military presence in the Middle East. Chief political correspondent Scott Thuman breaks down the latest.
Both from Israel's north and the south. Fears of a wider war in the Middle East growing, and how much Iran's involvement as an ally of Hamas will complicate an already explosive situation. Iran's foreign minister announcing he spoke to Hamas leaders about support to Gaza, just as the White House worries how retaliation and a potential ground invasion by Israel would affect American hostages being held there.
We've been talking to our Israeli counterparts about their plans, their intentions, their strategy.
Israel seeing the next stage of fighting as almost inevitable, showing what it claims is proof. Hamas has considered the use of cyanide or chemical weapons based on evidence recovered from dead militants.
And in this material, there were instructions how to produce chemical weapons.
Meanwhile, U.S. officials continue to urge Americans to leave countries that are immediately more dangerous, from Lebanon to Iraq.
Due to increased tensions in various locations around the world, the the potential for terrorist attacks, demonstrations, or violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests, the Department of State advises U.S. citizens overseas to exercise increased caution.
Some also suspicious of China's recent military moves as it sent warships to the region after the initial attack on Israel as part of a so-called goodwill tour. China still a major concern in general, as discussed by top intelligence leaders of America's closest allies.
There is no country that presents a broader, more comprehensive threat to our ideas, our innovation, our economic security, and ultimately our national security.
And as tensions rise, America sending additional air defense systems to the Middle East, as well as the aircraft carrier USS Eisenhower to defend against increased attacks against U.S. military facilities. On Capitol Hill, Scott Thuman for the National Desk.
And the strike expands tonight. An additional 6,800 UAW auto workers off the job at a Stellantis Ram truck assembly plant in Sterling Heights, Michigan. The UAW targeted the facility because Stellantis, it said, had, quote, the worst proposal on the table. The additional workers walking out brings the total up to more than 40,000 assembly men and women on strike against Ford, Stellantis, and GM in a demonstration now in its 5th week. Stellantis has not yet replied to today's strike announcement. Separately, Ford did lay off another 67 workers at a Sterling axle plant due to not enough work for them to do. Ford has laid off more than 3,100 workers since the work stoppages first began. And an off-duty pilot in jail tonight after being charged and arraigned today with 83 counts of attempted murder and endangering an airplane. An Alaskan Airlines flight from the Seattle area to San Francisco was diverted safely to Portland yesterday after Joseph David Emerson tried to disrupt the operation of the engines while sitting as an authorized extra passenger in the cockpit. The crew was able to subdue Emerson and secure the aircraft without weapons. The FBI has taken over the investigation and said there is no continuing threat. Meantime, a manhunt continues in Laverne, Tennessee for John Drake Jr., accused of shooting 2 police officers over the weekend. Both have been released from the hospital and they can be expected to recover fully. John Drake Jr. is the son of Metro Nashville Police Department Chief John Drake and is a convicted felon. Drake Jr. is considered armed and dangerous, but despite being on the loose, the Laverne Police Department lifted a shelter-in-place order for the community yesterday. Meanwhile, the 4 inmates who escaped from a Georgia jail last Monday, they are still on the run. And authorities say a man is now injured in connection with the case. When officers knocked on the door of a Macon apartment building today to try to question someone, a shot was fired through the door from inside. A SWAT team found the man hurt, seemingly having shot himself. The rewards offered for information are now totaling $73,000. In less than 30 minutes, House Republicans are scheduled to meet for a closed-door candidate forum during which 9 Republicans will make their pitch to be the next House Speaker after both Congressmen Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan failed to garner enough support to secure the gavel. An internal secret ballot vote will take place tomorrow morning to select a nominee, and then a floor vote to elect that person could happen as soon as tomorrow afternoon. A nominee needs 217 votes to be elected as Speaker. But even without a Speaker, House Republicans, they are still revealing new Biden family bank documents they say show improper behavior by the president. As the National Desk's Christine Frizzell reports, it's a transaction the White House says was totally above board.
Mr. President. As President Biden manages crises here at home and abroad and runs for re-election, House Republicans are pushing ahead with their case for impeachment.
The media says, well, you got to have a payment to Joe. Well, here we go. Here's the first payment to Joe.
At the center of the latest allegation, this check for $200,000 for a loan repayment to Joe Biden from his brother and sister-in-law. The same day and in the same amount as a check James Biden received from AmeriCorps, a company which, according to its website, specializes in acquiring and managing rural hospitals.
He convinced this company to give him $600,000, and they did it in increments. The last increment was $200,000.
According to bankruptcy court documents released by the Oversight Committee, the payments were based upon representations that his last name, Biden, could open doors and that he could obtain a large investment from the Middle East based on his political connections. The White House calling the claims deceptive. Spokesman Ian Sams posting on X, it's a loan repayment from when President Biden loaned his brother money when he was out of office in 2018, no less.
Mr. James Biden and Ms. Sarah Biden.
President Biden's brother James has long been central to the investigation into the Biden family, along with his son Hunter. Both found to have created multiple LLCs. House investigators say were used to disguise the comings and goings of payments, including from countries like China and Russia.
And if you're using an LLC to simply pass through money, that's where allegations of money laundering or other crimes occur.
An attorney for James Biden says the House Oversight Committee also... An attorney for James Biden says the House Oversight Committee also has documents that show that James Biden received a loan from his brother Joe back in January of 2018. They also say that they are really going to focus on, the date that this was written.
And so, Christine, if this was a standard loan repayment to a family member, what do Republicans say is wrong with that?
Yeah, they're really focusing on the idea that the ability to be repaid had to do with leveraging the family name, what they call shady business deals, that this company, AmeriCorps, which is now bankrupt, by the way, was simply trying to buy access here. Amira?
Very interesting. Okay, Christine Frizzell, live in Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you. New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, he pleaded not guilty this afternoon to his latest indictment. The Democrat was accused of acting as a foreign agent for the Egyptian government while he was the Senate Foreign Relations Committee chairman. It comes after he and his wife pleaded not guilty to an initial indictment in September. Menendez says the allegations are false. And coming up, the U.S. government is warning about a rise in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate crimes. What the White House is saying about specific threats in this country, then how much an average American would need to earn to afford a home right now with prices still high and mortgage rates still on the rise. Plus, PTSD that affects about 1 in 14 adults. We're going to explore how one organization is improving the lives of veterans who have the condition. We're back in just 90 seconds. Well, no evidence to support anti-Semitism being behind the weekend murder of Detroit synagogue leader Samantha Wall. That's what Detroit police had to say in an earlier press conference. Saturday morning, police found Wall's body outside her home with a trail of blood leading inside. No suspect has been named, but Detroit Police Chief James White did indicate they are getting very close.
We have a number of people that give us interest. We are just short of calling one of the people a suspect, but we are working to that end, and we will be there.
All of this comes as the Department of Homeland Security issued a new intelligence assessment expecting anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate crimes to rise amid the ongoing Israeli-Hamas war. The memo says the United States should remain in a heightened threat environment in the near to medium term, although White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre downplayed any specific threats within the United States.
We have not seen any credible threats. I know there's been always questions about credible threats. One of the things that the president has done is directed his team, Homeland Security team, to prioritize prevention and disruption of any emerging threats that could harm the Jewish, the Muslim, Arab Americans, or any other communities.
It is getting harder and harder for first-time homebuyers to find something they can afford. A double whammy of high home prices and rising mortgage rates, causing a sharp slowdown in sales across much of the country. National correspondent Atrel Nashar takes a look at what buyers and sellers are up against.
A dreaded milestone hitting the housing market. 8% mortgage rates. Many buyers are getting boxed out, and it's showing up in home sales data. In September, existing home sales were down more than 15% from a year ago, according to the National Association of Realtors. The group's chief economist, Lawrence Yoon, is calling on the Federal Reserve to stop its interest rate hikes. He says that could allow mortgage rates to drop to 6.5% next year.
If the mortgage rate was to remain at 8% for a long period, say over the next 12 months, that will be a very difficult circumstance for the first-time buyers who want to enter the market.
Higher rates can mean an owner has to stay in their home for longer before they can profit off a sale. Financing costs aside, current home prices can keep home ownership out of reach. According to Redfin, a home buyer would need to earn $115,000 to afford the U.S. median home price of $420,000. But Americans' real median income was just about $75,000 in 2022, according to the census.
We just don't have enough supply, and consequently, I think the lack of supply will keep the home prices relatively stable, despite the fact that we have lower demand.
For many, it makes more sense to keep renting. According to data from real estate group CBRE shared with the Wall Street Journal, the average new monthly mortgage payment is 52% higher than average apartment rent, the biggest gap since 1996. Current market conditions pressuring buyers and sellers to stay put to save money. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar reporting.
The U.S. is showing support for the Philippines after Chinese ships blocked and then hit two Filipino vessels in the South China Sea yesterday. Today, the State Department said the U.S. stands with its Philippine allies in the face of China's dangerous and unlawful actions. The Chinese Coast Guard blamed the Philippines for the collisions. And we have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We are taking the pulse of America.
Outside of Riverton Park United Methodist Church, hundreds of people are sleeping in tents as they legally seek asylum in this country, and the number is only growing.
We see anywhere between 10 and 15 a day coming to us.
Pastor Jan Bolerjack said most of the people coming in are from Venezuela and Angola, and many showing up with children and infants. On October 6th, a state of emergency was declared by Tequila's mayor, and at the time, Bolerjack said they had 180 people at the church. That number has now grown to 300.
Well, we don't have any outflow. We don't have any way to move people out very well yet, and people just keep coming in.
Bolerjack said she's thankful for the state of emergency declaration, but knows it will be some time before they get help.
It's a problem throughout the region, but the numbers are tracked closely, week by week in Baltimore City. As of October 14th, 8,812 auto thefts had been reported year to date. In that same time period last year, in 2022, just 2,682 auto thefts were recorded by Baltimore police. BPD reporting a 229% increase in this type of crime year over year.
Uptick in customers that have come in and have had their cars stolen.
In nearby Owings Mills, Len Stoller Automotive noticing a change. For why some customers in the Baltimore region come in looking to buy.
It's been way more prevalent in the last, I'd say, 8 months than in times in the past.
Or in reality, replace what was taken.
3 weeks ago, Lily New was participating in a Gymkhana equestrian event in Prather when her horse got spooked right before she was about to ride out of the stable. The horse ran 3/4 of a mile and bucked Lily onto a cement road.
So she has multiple skull fractures in the back of her skull. She has one small fracture in the front of her skull, and she has bruising on her frontal lobe and a perforated eardrum.
Shane New says his daughter Lily was unconscious for 12 days after the accident and recently woke up.
She still thinks she's in a dream state. There's a lot of unknown still right now. We're just taking it day by day.
And coming up, how a nonprofit is helping veterans with PTSD through experiences in nature and new connections. Stay with us. PTSD affects about 1 in 14 adults. It's often caused by traumatic experiences ranging from sexual assault to house fires. There are a higher rate of combat veterans experiencing it. And tonight's In Your World Investigates, Mark Hyman takes a look at one organization that pairs up veterans who have PTSD with outdoor activities to aid in their recovery.
For all Americans to understand that the challenges of service in our military, especially combat service, don't end when the military service members come home.
Retired Marine Colonel Brian Gilman is the CEO of the nonprofit Warriors and Quiet Waters.
Warriors and Quiet Waters enables post-9/11 combat veterans and their loved ones to thrive through peak experiences in nature and strong connections and belonging.
Those peak experiences have aided veterans as they negotiate the next chapters in their lives, especially if they have physical or invisible wounds. At Montana's Quiet Waters Ranch, which has hosted more than 1,600 military, veterans, and spouses since 2007, even the volunteers find the smallest of tasks can be therapeutic. Ken and Jen Ahrens spent the week cooking for everyone. A nutritionist helped develop the menu. Ken was an Air Force bomb disposal technician with multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Myself being a retired military and then coming through here as a warrior, it's just a way that we like to give back. It gives us a lot of good feeling to come and support other warriors in the same programs that we went through.
The Ahrens have volunteered several times.
You come as a stranger, you leave as family.
But when Ken started as a program guest, he had doubts he belonged.
We had this common theme when we talked about it amongst the six of us is why us? We've seen veterans that had mental health issues bigger than mine, veterans that were missing limbs. Why not them? Sorry, a little emotional, but the conversation we had, Brian said, you're here because you need to be here at this moment.
We found that same opinion he felt undeserving with Navy SEAL Andy Guillory and his wife, Cassie.
Yeah, I almost felt like not worthy. Why me? Why I get to come?
Andy is still serving and nearing retirement. The Guillorys are trying to avoid challenges others have faced after transitioning. For Andy, switching off from full-time warrior to full-time family man may be easier said than done.
You're changing who you are and going to try and fit yourself into another mold almost. Like he is in the teams, but at that point he will have been a team guy.
For some post-combat veterans who transition to civilian life, the lack of an intense, high-paced, mission-oriented focus can be disorienting.
Well, we're trying to provide a path for them to rebuild that here at Warriors and Quiet Waters.
A week packed with fly fishing, family-style meals, and intimate group discussions emphasize the importance of strong mind, body, and spirit in overcoming challenges. Tying it all together are healthy relationships.
Really look at any strong relationship or a really good team. They show each other vulnerability, which builds trust. Like that's the foundation. And if you have that, it doesn't matter really what comes towards you, you can overcome it.
For Inside Your World Investigates, I'm Mark Hyman in Bozeman, Montana.
Coming up, this dog has broken a major world record. His story right after the break. Stay with us. The oldest dog ever has died. Guinness World Record says Bobby from Portugal has passed away at the age of 31 and a half. His owners were not originally planning to keep the entire litter, but their son did hide one puppy, so the family decided to keep him when they found out. He spent most of his days outside with other animals. The family attributes his long life to his diet. Bobby ate whatever they ate. Remarkable. And tonight, Bobby, of course, in dog heaven. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.